Welcome back, friends. It is time, the best conversation you're gonna have all day. Welcome to SaviTalk, where we are rooted in conversation. And let me tell you, we have got the ultimate special guest coming up for this episode. Before I get to that, Enrique, what's going on, buddy?
David, I'm excited for this one. I hear she basically invented the internet or pieces of it.
Yeah, pretty much. She invented internet, she invented standards. Like, it's just, she invented everything. Like,
How did we even get that?
listen, we are just privileged to be in her presence.
I think it's because of you.
So is the audience. Not because of me. It's not because of me at all. She had the time, so she said, I will come and grace your lovely audience with her presence.
Oh man.
We are talking about, folks, none other than recently anointed, the #1 pick on Okta's Identity Top 25, Heather Flanagan herself.
Heather.
This is going to be an amazing episode. Stay right there. All right. She has made her way here. There was a procession, people. Like, they laid out roses. There was trumpets. It was the most impressive thing I've ever seen. Heather Flanagan, welcome to the show.
You have a very creative interpretation of what happened today.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for coming. No, I was looking forward to this one. Like I said, well, you basically touched the internet. Sometimes I flex saying, well, I came up with ITDR. So this is not it. It's way bigger. The impact is much bigger. So Enrique, it's not the flex you think it is, right? So ITDR. But Heather.
I have touched the internet in many ways, but all of them have been completely appropriate. No inappropriate touching. You know, a lot of it has been fantastic because it's coming about from me, someone like me, who I'm supposed to be a librarian. That's my degree. I'm a librarian.
Is that
Yep.
your major?
Yep. I have a degree in library science from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Once I got that degree, I never ended up working in a library again. I'm not sure why not.
Were you afraid of AI taking your job as a librarian?
How old do you think I am? I think, no, because in 1995, when I graduated, that was not a concern.
Yeah.
In fact, we were just where my undergraduate still had the card catalog.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah.
I
You may not remember what is that. I remember card catalogs. Cool. So thank you, and Heather. So what? So you made this top 25 list, and I think I don't think I have a ranking between them, but I agree with David. Top of the names that we have in
No,
the
I saw the rankings. They just didn't let everybody else know because they didn't want people's feelings to get hurt. I saw the rankings. Heather was #1.
Guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit what you do. I know you have so many affiliations and things that you do, but perhaps to explain to me, I think that's the first time we have this one-on-one because I know of you, of course. I know how fantastic you are, but I think share with me, the listeners, a little bit of, okay, so what different institutions, well, what are you doing today? So
Okay.
Yeah, what are the big things in your life?
Right. So ask a small question. Why don't you to start? So what I do is let me tell you what I'm not doing. I'm not a developer.
Okay, same.
I'm not an architect, right? I'm not an ops manager. So like when you're in tech, it's like, okay, well then what do you do? What's left? Because you know, this is well, as it turns out, my favorite technical people in the world usually aren't great communicators. They're not always the most organized people I've ever met. And they certainly can't translate what they're trying to do into something that either their users or their management understand. And that's where I come in. I come in these large-scale collaborations that are all working towards how do you make the internet as a whole better. And I'm like, okay, how can I help you? What do you need? In some cases, that's executive oversight for the process of their publication, right? For 8 years, I was the RFC Series editor for the Internet Engineering Task Force.
So IETF.
Yeah, IETF, right. And if you've ever referred to an RFC, especially if you've ever referred to an RFC since 2019 in the whole new format, the new format, that was my fault. The reason we don't have plain text ASCII anymore, it took 8 years, but by gosh, I got them to change. And then I said, all right, people, I am done.
That's a career right there. right?
Yeah, and that was not a full-time job, right? No, since I became an independent about 15 years ago, I have so many different roles, and they're fantastic because you just get to say, all right, look at all these communities. Did you know what these people are doing over here? Let me pull you together and work on that. And you need that, and you need that, and these people over here need to come in for that.
I love that.
It's super cool.
Yeah. And within the work with IETF and the internet, so this 8-year stint, so I was always very curious. What does it take? And they say, you had a day job besides this thing, or other jobs besides this thing, was not even a full-time thing. But what was the actual effort? And explain the day in life and how you contribute to a specification like that, and perhaps other people that may be interested in doing that.
Okay, so what I was doing is not what a typical participant in the IETF would do.
Okay.
Or any standards organization for that matter, because I collect standards organizations like other people collect Pokemon, right? It's like, how many can I actually participate
catch them
in?
all.
All of them. I want all of them. Because they're all so interesting in terms of their process and procedures and the personalities that they bring and attract. The type of conversations they have. If you're going to go to an ISO meeting, you are talking about, I would like to interrupt Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, I would like to raise a question, super formal.
I object, Your Honor, kind of thing.
Something like that. I mean, Robert's Rules of Order become the way you do things. And then you get into the IETF where they stand up and go, I think that's stupid. I mean, it's just very blunt,
I love the
very
perspective. This is so refreshing. Okay, no, tell me more.
So it can be any number of different things, right? So what I would do in a given day, or what I do in any given day in these collaborations, is a lot of listening to understand. Let's say I'm having a working group that's got some uncomfortable debate, which happens.
Really? In our industry?
Yeah, I know, right? It's like, how could you not all agree on Apple, Google? What do you mean you don't just do that? Right. But you stop and say, okay, let me step back, and Enrique, let's just go over here for a second. I want to understand where you're coming from. What are you talking about? What are your concerns? Listen to that, incorporate that, and then go, okay, cool. Let me go talk to David, right? I'm not going to name names, but let me see if I can't bridge something here. David. So you really are unhappy with this design choice, and I mean, I think I know where they're coming from on that. I think it's this. What makes you uncomfortable about that, right? Wow. And having these kinds of conversations, it's a lot of facilitation where I understand the tech they're trying to do, well enough to be able to have that conversation, though not well enough to actually suggest a particular solution or not. But that can happen multiple times a day. Lots of bouncing. It might be calls. It might be, typing on Slack, any number of things. And then when I start to lose my composure, I put all that down and I write a blog post, because I write my best blog posts when I just get really angry with everybody.
Steam off, right?
Yeah, steam comes off and it's like, you know what, I'll just start typing, and it's all good.
I can see this issue when I bring up our industry, and the way I said is because I can see this happening in organizations as well, right? So not only on these forums that you participate, but clients buying technology today or running IAM programs, vendors, right, building products, how many times they disagree, right? So I think it's a very valuable skill that, and then it takes effort, it takes intention, right, to make that and find that common ground.
How's your role shifted with IDPro in the last couple of years, right? Because that's
IDPro has been super fun. So I was a founding member.
Yep.
Because I learned what Ian Glazer and Sarah now Cacchetti was trying to do in 2017, and I'm like, I think that's cool. I think a community that's just focused on identity practitioners is a cool idea.
Yeah.
Right? And they thought amongst themselves, you know what? It would be really nice if we actually had documentation, actual material, researched, published material, peer-reviewed material. Who could we get to actually organize a process like that? Which one? I'm like, me. And they said, you. And they hired me to be the principal editor of the Body of Knowledge, which is, a Creative Commons licensed, freely available material. It's got over 36 articles at this point, just about all sorts of topics about identity and access management. It is peer-reviewed. It is reviewed by the board of IDPro. Lots of people get to look at this. It's pretty cool stuff. And as part of that, let me tell you about scope creep when it comes to jobs. It wasn't just they put the process together. It also then was like outreach to, I need more people to be willing to write. I need to actually help them learn how to write. How do you do research? Because these are not blog posts. These are actually thoughtful, researched, 10-page articles, right? Help them work with that. Train them on the writing process. Work with them on the editing process.
Polishing.
Lots of, in some cases, perhaps, a lot of rewriting, because English is not necessarily their first language, and they come out with this stream of consciousness, which is great for them. No one else is going to understand a word that they said, but that's okay, because I am here to help. But that then leads into, okay, well, how do you attract more people? You get into social media. And so I started, taking over their social media bits, and then taking over their announcements to Slack bits, and then taking over reports to the board bits, and then, taking over at which point it's like, excuse me, what am I doing? They had brought on an executive director, a president of the organization, and she left, I guess it was 2 years ago. Yeah, it was about 2 years ago now. And the board at the time was like, well, dang, now what do we do? Heather, help. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be executive director. I don't know how to do that job. I'll do it interim. How about that? And they said, sure. Yeah. Okay, so now I am, in fact, the official executive director of IDPro, and still the principal editor. And that is one of 6 contracts that I currently hold.
How many members are there today at IDPro?
So in terms of like warm bodies, it's around 1,300 people.
Wow.
But a lot of those come from, there's individual members, people who want to sign up directly for themselves. But then there's also people who their companies sign up for them.
Signing up.
And therefore, like if you come in at, say, an oak level, then you get 10 seats that you can use for just your people as an interesting business development opportunity. Or if you come in at diamond or platinum, then it's like, really, how many seats do you want? Just take them all. Yeah. And so we have some of the larger organizational members have hundreds of people.
The reach is amazing, and with the recent news of Identity at the Center podcast as well, the partnership. So tell us about what was that about? What was
that was glorious. Okay, so I don't need to tell you, the producing podcasts is not a small amount of work.
Oh yeah.
And it's not.
Well, I don't know. I just show up.
Well, I was doing showing up. I was also doing the organizing. I was also trying to figure out, what the production costs are, and it's just not a small thing.
No.
So IDPro, put one together just because we wanted to interview our members and help people understand, what did you do to get involved in identity? Because no one has the same story. No one went to school for this. Everyone fell into it, and so it was just this really neat.
Well, when I guess guy was born into identity, but sorry, go on.
One person, Amy.
Yeah.
But then we ran out of funding. Okay. And almost exactly at that time, Identity at the Center was like, hey, we could partner. And I'm like, you're a nonprofit now, aren't you? And they said, yeah. And I'm like, yes. So the values aligned, the mission aligned.
It was such a great partnership.
It's fantastic. And they are such a wonderful team, even though last night at the Identiverse Identisquabble, Identity Feud, IDPro did kick their butts.
Oh,
I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah, I was curious. Who won it?
Was it even close?
We had 380 points, and they had 100 and something.
So, there's another thing I wanted to ask you about, Heather, was spherical cow.
Yes.
And I'm one of those guys. English is not my first language, so it's spherical, is it?
Yep.
It's spherical. Yep. Yeah. And I know the analogy of that. It comes from what a perfect cow would look like.
Kinda.
To make hamburger.
It's the reference to a really old joke about theoretical physicists, which in many areas of tech, people just use that to refer to how they end up needing to talk to management about something that's really complicated. I'm not going to go through the whole joke. If you're curious about it, it's such an old joke and such an established joke. It has its own Wikipedia entry. Type in spherical cow, you will get the whole record of it.
Well, I'm famous for the dad joke, so yeah.
There you go. But what it boils down to is you're taking a hugely complex universe-sized problem, which of course we never have to deal with in IAM, and squish it down into something you can actually work with, something you actually make traction on. Is it a perfect analogy to all the complexity in the universe? No.
No.
Does it necessarily need to be?
No.
Not to get started, not to make movement.
Enough summation is sufficient.
Right. And since my very first clients were almost the laser interferometer gravitational wave observatory people, also known as LIGO, black holes, don't worry about it. When I was picking a name for my very new one-person LLC, Spherical Cow, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. I take everybody's super complicated problems and I squish them down to something really, really simple to work with. And the physicists I'm dealing with will think I'm hilarious. And in fact, they made me an honorary physicist at the time.
Oh,
nice. And thus the company name is born.
And who is the typical client? Is it like a CISO or
So a typical client for me is actually usually a collaboration.
Okay.
So ICANN, which is a great big multi-stakeholder model, they were a client for a while.
Okay.
The IETF was a client for a while. I have people sponsoring my work with standards right now. Thank you very much for your sponsorship. And that would be like Google is sponsoring me for some of the standards work I do with the W3C, but so is the International Association of Scientific, Technical, and Medical Publishers.
Medical publishers? Oh, wow.
The STM publishers.
They're everywhere, Heather.
Kinda. Well, it's about the internet, right? And it's about identity. This is not a localized subject. So.
Hence why she was #1 on the list.
Yeah.
I read the logic. I thought it was sound.
Easy choice, right?
Easy choice.
Easy choice.
Easiest choice ever made.
Well, my mother was certainly very proud when I sent her a picture of me over Times Square. She has no idea what I do. She's pretty sure I'm just like this international spy. Yeah. But she's like,
Yeah, I got calls. Enrique, the internet is slow today. Do you get those type of calls too?
no, I found a way around that.
Oh, yeah? Tell me.
Okay, so people talk about AI as like, oh, it's coming for your jobs, you know, it hallucinates, it's really scary, yes. But I found a service and I'm like, okay, they'll set up your AI bot that is, you know, you when you're asleep or something like that. And I trained it with my blog posts and some other material. And then when my mother called, she's like, hey, I've got this question. And I'm like, that would be really neat if you talked to my bot, Mom. What do you think of that? She did. And her response was, this is amazing. Can I talk to it instead of you? I'm like, yes, you can. And she says it's much more polite than I am to her.
Well, you trained it well.
You know, right? It was actually a configurable setting. You know, it's how funny, how polite, all this type of thing. I'm like, well, if my mom's going to use it, let me set it this way.
I had a similar interaction with my mom, and she's a doctor, pediatrician. And I remember vividly when now AI is mainstream, and she gave me a call. Enrique, do you know this thing about ChatGPT? It's amazing. And then it types in English. I say Portuguese, English come out, and it's like, yeah, I'm all right. Okay, she's not in IT, not in cyber, not in identity, and that's okay. Now AI is mainstream because AI is not new, right? But so in any of those standards and ICANN and all those organizations, where do you think is the intersection of those standards and identity? And I keep thinking about this, Heather, and perhaps our clients, they keep them awake at night with non-human identities, AI agents, identity as a whole. What could we do in terms of regulation, right? I had this, and I promise I'm going to get to the point. I had this hypothesis the other day of among all the risks of AI and AI agents, yes, taking away or replacing jobs, but that's a concern. But I think the biggest one was around culture, and we had a discussion about culture and how AI can generate such individualized content that we miss the human interaction of shared experiences. So with that and perhaps other risks around AI and agentic AI, what do you think we could do in terms of standards to help mitigate that and other risks?
It's a really interesting question because right now, especially given the hype around AI, vendors and a lot of other people who think using this will suddenly let them lay off all of their staff and make all the money in the world, right? They're not willing to go slow. I'm going to pick on the Model Context Protocol for a minute. MCP, right? Okay, so MCP is serving a very, very important function in the ecosystem. It is like that universal adapter you bring with you when you travel so that you can plug it into anything in any country and still get power.
Amazing analogy, I love it. Yeah.
So, cool, that's awesome. You know that's not a standard, right? That's not being standardized.
It's an Anthropic thing they developed.
And bless them, they're doing the right thing in terms of making it an open source project. Anybody can look at the code, that's cool, but that doesn't make it a standard.
Yes.
Right? To bring it to a standards organization. For all I care, make a standards organization. Do a FIDO Alliance model of, okay, we've got this really very specific thing, we're going to build something up. Because what that structure brings is it makes you slow down. It makes you think. It makes you say, what are the security considerations involved here? What are the privacy considerations? What are the accessibility considerations? It may be happening kind of haphazard, but there's no structure around it to force that question to say, is this actually the right thing? And that worries me. And that all of AI worries me like that. The speed they want to go, where I don't think people want to standardize it because they want to go fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a hindrance. And you speak of standards, right? What comes to mind, and being in this industry for as long as I have, I'm so old. But I remember standards like SPML, things like dead standards, right? So what do you think makes a good standard or a standard that doesn't last? And have you seen standards that, oh my God, this is so wrong. Why are we even writing about this?
Yes.
That's the answer, yeah.
Okay. Well, it was funny. I'm gonna, since it's been many years, and all the people that were on the Internet Engineering Steering Group have now moved off.
For the record, no offense, guys. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just didn't work, right?
Right. So they're now not there, and they've rolled over. There's a whole new set. Maybe they don't use this acronym the way they used to, which was HBU. What happens when you're going through the RFC publication process is, of course, a draft is created, consensus is formed around the draft, and then it goes to the IASG to sort of just make sure that all the different
what is the
areas, the Internet Engineering Steering Group, that sort of oversees the IETF, and they go through and they're like, okay, but does this overlap or conflict or do anything weird with these other areas, with transport, with internet, with security, with routing. But there would be stuff coming in and they'd go, yeah, HBU, harmless but useless. And they'd say, yeah, just go ahead and publish it. It's harmless but useless.
It's harmless.
And I would light on fire because, of course, I'm looking at the reputation of the whole series and I'm like, you're willing to publish completely
such a low bar.
It's like, yeah, well, it didn't do it any harm, and we just don't have enough time in the day to push back on stuff like that.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, man.
And that happens a lot? I mean...
It happens enough that they had an acronym for it. Again, I don't know if they still use that. HBU.
That's new to me.
Harmless but useless.
Oh
well.
And maybe we're using that in the office.
I mean, I think you bring up a good point about like the standards of AI and like basically not wanting to slow down, right? And I think that's...
Yeah.
I think that is, it's very accurate. I think the way that the industry wants to move and innovate with this, they don't want to take the time and slow down because we're getting very close into like the Ian Malcolm of like, we're just trying to see what can we do, right? Not whether we should or what it's supposed to look like.
Right.
And it's that dangerous part of the curiosity side of an engineer or a scientist where you start to see these things and you're just like, well, can I do this?
Right.
And then can I do this? Right. And I think the amazing thing about it is that the more you ask those questions, it evolves and gets even better. And then now can I go do this? But to a point, like I think we talked in a previous episode, like we're still in this cycle of, especially in security and technology, like we're going to do things until something bad happens that makes us go, oh, guess we should go put these things in place
now. By standard.
My fear with this though is that like, I think this bad thing is going to be exponentially worse than we've ever seen because how fast it's moving and how fast reaching it can get. Like I think like CrowdStrike level stuff, right? Like that was huge, right? Like that affected so much of just commerce, like in the US and like even outside of that, what we saw. And I'm like, the the explosion of this and how fast we're moving this, and if we're gonna sit and do our normal thing, it was like, we'll just wait till something bad happens, and then all of a sudden we're like, okay, now we'll put these things in place. I don't know. I fear that bad thing is gonna be like really, really bad because we're gonna be so far down the pipe. We're not used to. I don't think we're not used to technology moving this fast. I'm gonna die on that hill. Like people will tell me, oh, but what about SaaS? What about this? I'm like,
No.
okay, but like SaaS was like, yes, you can go and get a credit card and sign up for this application, cool. And SaaS to me was like horizontal. Like I've got other bunch of people who are also creating these applications. So it spread that way, right? And I'll call vertical meaning like adoption of how many people are using it, right? SaaS went really fast this way. It was vertical adoption, but it was kind of slowed because organizations were still kind of riskier. They would find it. This thing is both ways, right? Not only is it like, hey, here's all these other different people who are creating how you can use AI, but also like in itself, the adoption rate of it and the actual technology is changing. Like the SaaS application you bought in January didn't completely change in June. It was still the same application, right? Maybe they launched you some new features, but like ChatGPT, when it launched and then like 18 months later, almost completely different. 4 new models were published, I think, right? Like the ability, the features that it had. And so like, that's the part that I'm like, this is cool, but like.
But it's cool.
What is the standard?
Well, so one of my, you have those interviews and they say, what's your greatest weakness and it's your greatest strength? And yeah, it's usually the same thing. I am super Gemini in how I think about things and pretty much about how I live. But on the one hand, like that whole speed and the risks that it brings is terrifying. On the other hand, I have a whole lot of sympathy for, we talk about, well, where does harmless but useless come from? It comes from not having any experience. You can't just theoretically come up with, well, I think it'll look like this and not test it.
Right.
You've got to test it. I think where it gets squirrely and that we haven't found a way around yet is the scale of the internet and the scale of digital identity has exploded. So when you are testing, let's talk about what Google did a few years back when they were talking about cookies. And they said, all right, well, we really don't understand what will happen. So we're just going to turn it off for 1%. That was a lot of freaking people, right? And for organizations that were all trying to, it's like, which 1%? It might be one person out of who knows how many, and your help desk is going to go, well, it works for me. But what was Google supposed to do in terms of, well, we won't know until we try.
Right.
But you can't try anything these days without suddenly hitting it at a scale that you've never hit it before. Right. So you need the experience. It's hard to get the experience without suddenly breaking all the things.
No.
And I think we're getting to the point, Heather. If you could give advice to listeners here, both IAM leaders and vendors like us, how could we perhaps collaborate better with standards making organizations to expedite it?
Wow, let me tell you about how hard it is to find consensus, right?
Yeah.
Learn about what it
Yeah, you
means
made a company around this, right?
Pretty much. So one of the biggest gaps in standards development is how few people participate. Like any given IETF meeting these days think about it. The IETF, the RFC Series covers how the internet routes BGP, DNS, SMTP for email, OAuth for the identities space, remote attestations. It's the breadth of how much it touches. Yeah, that's about 1,200 people show up. It's not even half the size of Identiverse, right? In terms of how many people actually go to a meeting. There's more participants that participate on mailing lists and whatnot, but it's still, where is everybody? And yet the internet is relying on these standards. Did we get all the right voices in the room? Did we have enough diversity of thought from different vendors, different cultures? Since standards take so long, vendors look at it and go, well, that's cute, charming. I got products I got to get out now.
Right.
And so on the one hand, what I really wish vendors and enterprises and whatnot would take the time to say, okay, but there is a long game to this. And yes, you have to make sure that you exist long enough to reach the long game.
Yeah.
But you really would do better to just build in some amount of time to participate in the process, to give feedback to what's going on, and to be willing to compromise such that we can reach consensus and keep it moving at a reasonable pace.
I'd love to help in making that message stronger and say, hey, there are benefits. Yes, it's a delayed reward, but I can understand, for example, some benefits of a vendor participating in the definition of a new draft of a standard. So you come out of the gate already supporting that standard.
It's called first mover advantage.
Yeah.
Do you think that makes it like harder to get consensus then when you have so let's say vendor community did a better job of participating. Now it's already struggled to get consensus. Now you got to get consensus amongst competitors who are like, well, no, I think it should be this way, right?
Right.
Because it's human. It's human to be competitive,
but,
right?
I mean, that's now why do standards take so long to develop? That's very much why, and that's why I said please become willing to compromise.
Right.
Because people will come in and say, no, my product does this, therefore the standard needs to match my product because this is what's being implemented.
Right.
Yeah, but your competitor is doing something slightly different, and if you ultimately want something that will improve the whole internet, then you're going to need to find some common ground into how to make this work.
Yeah. I had brief exposure to standards in a previous life. I can't get there as often I was like, but on the IPC working group, and it is tough, right? Like to get consensus and then we go down in such depth. And so I can definitely see the challenge for somebody who's like, hey, maybe I want to give up. Let me jump on this. And it's like, holy crap, right? Like, it's like no matter where you start, you have to just start running on the treadmill. Cause it's like, we had these 5 meetings before you got here. We had all these discussions and you're like, wait. But what about that? But then you don't want to hold up this meeting cause it's like, go read that. So it is a challenge, right? I do think it does need more people to kind of be involved and kind of help move these things along, because I think the other thing that we have to do is realize for the vendors, and on that side, it's like standards aren't going to stop you from competing. If anything, standards accelerate your ability to go in and do the things you want, because now it's like, okay, well, I don't have to focus on how am I going to go do this thing. If there's a standard that I can follow, I can put my intellectual capital and build my IP around something over here that utilizes that standard. And I think that's one of the perspectives that it takes in vendors to kind of flip. You still have the whole capitalist thing of the day. At the end of the day, it's like I got to go build a product. I got to be here long enough. Do I want to commit resources to a standard that may never get adopted, right? Because that's the other thing, right?
Yeah.
There's creating the standard and then hoping that people actually use the standard.
HPU stuff, which goes back to that point. So do you see a common thread between the standards? Okay, this really works. This was a very productive meeting versus other meeting. Oh man, this is just a waste of time.
Well, I can tell you one thing that differentiates useful meetings from not useful meetings. It's a key thing. If you do nothing else, get someone to take notes. And interestingly enough, that's not something most standards organizations are willing to let AI do, because there will be times where you're like, no, pick up the pen. We need to have,
you got to do the work, right?
Don't necessarily want this recorded, but some human judgment needs to go into it. But yeah, having those notes, because a couple months down the road, if someone comes back and says, wait, no, that's not what I said.
Here.
Write it down. Write it down.
Right.
So much write it down. It's huge, just huge.
I love this type of advice. It's pragmatic and it's just achievable.
One thing that, another thing, especially vendors of a certain, certain size and
stature.
If you have, one of the things that I do is for those groups that are sponsoring me with the standards that I do work directly with, I create a report every month that says, all right, here's what this means for your industry, but that's the TLDR, and then there's another section saying, okay, let me remind you what these specs are, and then it's the detail of here's what goes in the actual issues, quick summaries, what opened, what closed in the last month. Having someone on your team dedicated to just create those reports, because then you take the top part and say, okay, executives, poof, that's what you need to worry about. Engineers, is there anything in here we care about? And it's just this structured thing. Those are really useful.
And you are already writing those reports, you said.
For some things. I mean, I don't scale infinitely. I can't write them for everything. But the model makes a lot of sense when you're trying to promote this in your own organization.
Were you involved in CAPE?
I was not involved in CAPE.
Okay.
I was not involved in CAPE. I watch it from the sidelines, such that when the shared signals framework and the CAPE profile happens, I'm aware of it, but I'm currently a lot more involved in that moment when you click on the login button in a browser. That's complicated stuff, man.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's complicated. I'm also getting involved in the, assuming again.
Are you talking about like tracking pixels? Or,
No. I'm talking about so once upon a time, when you go to log into the New York Times, you click on the login button, stuff happens, right?
Yeah.
And that stuff that happens could very well be off behind the scenes. The browser didn't care. The browser basically was just this rendering window to take you from here to here, and that's all it did. It was a rendering window. And then companies were like, well, wait, but you are enabling tracking behavior. You are enabling stuff that's not safe for users. You, big tech, the owners of the browsers, you need to take some responsibility for all of this, which I get the logic. And of course, when you are a Google or an Apple, that moment of logging in, of signing up, making that easier for users is desirable behavior.
Yeah.
But the protocols, the underlying protocols, OAuth, SAML, they were never designed for the browser to actually step in the middle and go, excuse me, traffic cop, are you all okay with this? Everybody's okay with this, right?
Yeah, this API calling this other API and this other IP address.
Right, it's like, are you okay with it? End user individual, are you okay for this relying party to talk to that identity provider? Identity provider, are you okay to, talk to this RP? Are you okay to talk to that? Like multi-dimensional, are you okay with this? Which is a really awful user experience if you don't get the specification right. And so, working on that kind of specification.
Yeah, which is very runtime. And
come to my Identiverse session on Thursday. Just talk about that.
Oh, I love it. And then, by the way, this is being recorded during Identiverse, right? And for me, it was kind of obvious how much attention we're giving to machine identities. I think is overdue.
Yeah.
And
a lot of attention to wallets, which is another area that I have to pay a lot of attention to. It comes down to that account choosing, the credential choosing, potentially the wallet choosing, all of which are not the same thing, but overlap from the user's perspective.
Do you think because the U.S. and we had a discussion about this in another episode on U.S. It's the United States, right, of America. So each state has specific regulations and laws. Does it make it more difficult for standards to work? And because the way the U.S. is versus, let's say, Canada or other countries?
It doesn't make it more difficult for standards to work. It makes it more difficult for people to choose what to implement.
Okay.
So a current, for instance, is when we're talking about Apple wallets or Google wallets or independent third-party wallets like the Saros Foundation Dub Wallet project, an open source project that will allow for white label wallets. But like looking at those three areas, okay, what protocols will Google be willing to support? Right, they lean more towards the OpenID for verifiable credentials. Open standards work, great. But Apple leans more towards the ISO mobile driver's license MDOC specifications. And they sort of look cross-eyed at each other going, wait, I don't know if do I have to support that other credential standard? I mean, I'm not sure Right, and in the meantime, the states are going, look, I just needed to hold a thing. Could you just sort this out so we could figure out what we're trying to do here? So yeah, it's not the standards in that case, it's the problem. It's everything else.
Makes sense.
All right, so a couple of rapid fire questions as we wrap up, Heather. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks.
We know you're a very busy woman because you created the internet and all. So,
Sorry. Yes.
All right, so first one. All-time favorite Identiverse session?
All time.
Yep. All time.
I don't even get to go to sessions. I'm surprisingly running around behind the scenes.
Okay, the best one you reviewed.
Oh, good heavens. The best one that I've ever seen. You know what? I'm going to promote my own one.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Let's do it.
I'm going to promote one I didn't 2022 that actually talked about the different standards organizations in terms of what's the difference between an industry-based standards organization, an open standards organizations, and a treaty-based standards organizations. I mean, it actually was like a 50-minute went into what are all these things as they relate to identity. Yes, 6 people showed up for that because they put me right against the passkey session that was brand new at the time.
Ahead of your time. Yeah.
But, so I'm gonna pick that one.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Favorite band?
You too.
Right. Cool. So this is the reason I like asking this type of question. So people out there that, hey, I'm too intimidated to even approach Heather. And say, hey, Sunday, Bloody Sunday. They'll have something to talk and approach you.
I'm sorry if someone comes up to me and goes, Sunday, Bloody Sundays, I'm gonna have perhaps a different reaction. I'll be like,
Thank you, Heather. No, it's such a delightful experience here with you, and it's internet royalty, right? So yeah, I really what, David?
I'm laughing at Heather's face.
No, you are.
I'm responsible for a lot of words.
Do you want to say something else that people don't know about you? Maybe it would make you have to talk about?
Just that, you know, if anyone happens to be listening to this who doesn't think they're technical, I hate that, by the way. It's like, I'm not technical, therefore I couldn't possibly. Remember, medieval English history degree, library science background.
Love it.
Yeah.
Heather, you're amazing. Thank you very much for coming to the show.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Heather.
So yeah, public service announcement. Maybe don't write Heather. Say hashtag you too or something like that. Or maybe you do. But I love how real and how approachable Heather is, man. I had some, starstruck moments and said, wow, it's such a celebrity with us here in the show. That was one of those times.
Yeah.
And but she was so cool, and the human part of that.
Oh yeah.
You don't say you're not technical. No, say just go and talk to people. But more important, listen to people.
Yeah. No, Heather's been a driving force behind a lot of things for a long time. So I'm really, as somebody who's her friend, I'm glad to see her get that recognition. And I love her enthusiasm for it, like, because we need it, because I couldn't do it. Like I could not do it. I've tried a couple of times being part of standards bodies, and it is a lot of work. Getting consensus is hard. It really is. It is really hard to get, 3 people in a room to agree about somebody, let alone 15, 20, and her enthusiasm for it, her love for it, and being able to organize it, put things together is fantastic.
A lot of work. I'm just happy that you and we agree about everything.
So far.
Not.
That's life though, man.
Man, that was fun. Thank you, David.
Fun. Yeah, thanks you.
Thank you.
Good rap, man.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we'll see you.
Bye.